Hey, it's Cham from Chimina Technical Limited. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my life as a Buddhist preacher. I was a Buddhist from birth. So how it happens in Sri Lanka, I was born in Sri Lanka. So how we are brought up is we get the same religion as our parents. So my mom was a Buddhist, my father was a Buddhist, so I was a Buddhist by birth. Uh, Even though I don't believe in that, because from birth, if you get a religion, you don't really have the luxury to be flexible and try to test other religions as well. I'm not saying there is right or wrong one, but it's good to have the flexibility. Anyway, so from my younger age, I was taught Buddhism at school, so I had to learn about Buddhism. I learned about Buddhist history, so that's how I was brought up. Uh, but I thought there was something more than the history, more than what we learn from the books, because it's meant to give you happiness. And by reading those, it didn't make me happy. So, and you're supposed to be able to become or achieve the ultimate happiness by becoming, by comprehending Buddhism or comprehending Dhamma. So I was a little bit puzzled, and so I was looking for this. I was reading stuff, I was reading a lot of materials, books. I was listening to Buddhist sermons, Buddhist preachings, but I had a feeling that this is not what I was looking for, or this is not what the real truth is, because I believed that I would be able to understand the real truth if I comprehended Buddhism. So when I was listening to these, and my mother was very interested in the same, so she was following some monks, she was reading books, she was listening to sermons, and she was sharing some of these stuff with me. And I came to London in 2003, and then this kind of, I wasn't really, I didn't have time to really do the research and look for this. So it was a kind of a pause at that time. But anyway, the time went by. Like I said, I went through some tough time with my previous marriage, and I was going through a very tough time, a dark time, and I wasn't very happy. So during this period, I remember my mother sent me a clip saying, "Oh, listen to this one. This is different. It's not the same. You might find what you're looking for in this." But I didn't listen to it for about a year or so. I remember that because she said, because she has been sending a lot. Since I was in London, since 2003, she was sending one after another. So I was listening to some of them and I'm like, oh, it's the same old thing. So I didn't want to listen to another one. After about 1 year, when I was going through this dark patch of my life, I thought, oh, let me just listen to this and see what. Uh, all of a sudden, when I listened to it, I felt something totally different. I felt like, oh, my eyes are opening. I'm seeing something that I never saw. I'm listening to something that I never listened to before, and this was a total a shift of my life. And I was pretty, how shall I say? I was pretty amazed in what I listened to, and I realized at the time that this was real Buddhism. So I was like, I need to speak to this monk. I need to see this monk. I spoke to my mom, and I arranged to go back to Sri Lanka to see this monk. And she said, "Oh, this monk is he doesn't speak to people like that. Anyone who comes in there, it's only once every week. He has this sermon, and about 2,000 people visit this sermon, and that's it. I won't be able to speak to them, the monk directly, but I thought I'll give it a go. We'll try." So I took a lot of. I took about 15 kilograms of fruit, and I was pretty excited to see the monk. It was Waharaka Thero, Waharaka Abbyarathanalankara Thero. So this was the monk that I was referring to. So I went there to Waharaka temple, and amazingly, I was able to see the monk and speak to him individually, which was a rare case. I was able to go to his place where he was residing and give the fruits that I brought from London, as well as speak to Thero. I explained what I realized, what I comprehended, And he was like, yes. And I had a question. I asked the question as well. And then I listened to the sermon. It went for about at least 6 to 7 hours. The whole day I was there. And then I came back and I was listening. I wanted to listen to more and more. So I downloaded about 2,500 plus audio clips. There weren't any video at the time, if I remember right. So I downloaded them into a USB. And then I brought back to London. Then I started listening to them over and over again. So that was how I met Waharaka Thero, and it was a very, very exciting journey. I loved it. The good thing about this happened in 2011, and there were a lot of other monks. Well, they were actually British, and they were working here in London. Some of them were working in the UK. Nivathapa Thero, he became a monk after listening to Waharaka Thero's sermons. There's Amadassana Thero, who was a banker in London. He was a British passport holder as well. He went to Sri Lanka. He became a monk after listening to this Dhamma. He was like, oh, what are we doing here? This is what the real truth is. This is what the real happiness is. And he became a monk. Amadassana Thero's wife also became a monk at the time. And I have listened to sermons of Amadassana Thero as well as Nivathapa Thero. There was another monk, Abhaya, Walasmulle Abhaya Thero, who was an engineer in Sri Lanka. He listened to Abbyarathanalankara Thero's sermons, and he became a monk too. There are so many of them who became monks after listening to the Dhamma, after comprehending the Dhamma. And I did follow these Theros as well, because they listened to Waharaka Thero. They were associating Waharaka Thero very closely. So I wanted to learn from them because I was in London. And Amadassana Thero's sermons are on YouTube in English, and the others are in Sinhala. Abhaya Thero's focusing more on meditation, and I've been to a few meditation retreats. He came to London a couple of times. I've been to pretty much all of them. Spent sometimes it was 2 weeks in a row, sometimes it was 9 days in a row meditating in a monastery or in a place where you have the ability to meditate really well. We had a retreat in Wales which went really well. So I have been to all of these, and that's when my preaching started. What happened was in one of these retreats I met Lukas, and there were a few others who were only speaking English. They didn't understand the preachings really well, so they wanted someone to speak with, so that that person can translate it into English, because these were all pretty much, most of them were held in Sinhalese, which is my mother tongue, which is mostly used in Sri Lanka. So anyway, then they asked me if I can do some discussions online, because some of them were from different countries. They were European, most of them, but from different countries. So I started this. There was about 4, 5, 6, 7, and then up to about 14 people who joined these sermons. And it became more and more interesting. I loved it because I had to learn before I could preach. So I learned it and I loved learning it. I comprehended more and more. Then I started a YouTube channel. I have about 3,390 following that channel. I still have the channel, but I don't do any preachings anymore, which maybe I can do from here and there once in a while. I'm not stopped preaching 100%. I still do meditation pretty much at least 3-4 times a week, which calms me down, which keeps me really healthy and quiet, and I feel really good after meditating. So that's something that I do, and that's something that I enjoy. So that's how I started my preaching life, or becoming a Buddhist preacher. So it was all free. It was done for free. There was no monetary involvement in there. It was all done for free. The preaching, if I was to explain to you what I was preaching, is how to become happy. So the reason how you become happy is by getting rid of the sufferings. So if you see what gives you suffering and get rid of all the sufferings, that's how you become entirely happy, or become ultimately happy. So what gives you suffering is attachment. So whenever you're attached to something, that gives you a suffering. The only thing that gives is a suffering, which at the time, we don't understand, we don't realize. For example, say you needed a car. You look at a car, you love the car, that's the model you want, that's the make you want, that's the color you want, you're like, I need that car. So that is when the attachment starts. You are attaching with something. Now, it comes three sufferings, which are sankhara dukkha, dukkha dukkha, and viparinama dukkha. So the sankhara dukkha is when you want something, you are trying to achieve it. So you don't just get it, you have to work for it. So you have to waste your energy to get it. So maybe you have to put some money in, maybe you have to work for it, you have to talk about it, you have to think about it. So it's the three that works are the brain and the words and the body has to be worked towards getting it. So you have to suffer, that's the suffering. You have to work towards getting it. But you don't feel the suffering because you are thinking, your objective is that, oh, if I get the car, I'm going to be so happy. So your focus is on the happiness. So you forget everything else and your focus goes towards having the car. So that the struggle or the suffering is not highlighted as such. Then once you get the car, as soon as you get the car, you didn't have a car before, now you have a car. So as soon as you get the car, you have the dukkha dukkha, which gives you a suffering when you have something. Now you have to protect it. You can't lose it. You are scared of losing it. Now it's a new suffering that you didn't have before. When you didn't have a car, you weren't worried. When you heard a noise outside, when a car alarm went off, you weren't bothered at all. But now you're like, oh, is that my car? So you're worried. So that's the second suffering. And the third suffering is viparinama dukkha, which happens when the car doesn't stay the same as you bought it. It depreciates, it changes, maybe dents come in, then maybe the paint fades off. So things like that happen and you don't want it, you don't like it, and that gives you a suffering. So these three sufferings come with anything that you attach with. So that's why the more you attach, the more you suffer, the more you let it go. But at the same time, this letting go and the attachment happens in your mind, not anywhere else. You think, oh, it's an agreement, it could be something else. But no, even if you write an agreement, if you sign an agreement, if you're not attached mentally, you're not going to suffer. But if you're attached mentally, you will suffer. So the detachment has to happen from your mind. So just mentally detach, mentally let it go, and you won't suffer. Basically, that's what the preaching is all about, how to get rid of the suffering. And that's the gist of what I was preaching. It's a lot to it, but yeah, I can't explain everything here now. So if you know about Buddhism, if you have heard about Buddhism, if you like Buddhism, if you want to learn about Buddhism, let me know. I would love to hear from you. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, comment on, maybe if I said something wrong, maybe let me know. I'm so glad to hear from you. And yeah, that's my life as a Buddhist preacher. I love doing it. Would I do it? Yes, I would do it. Maybe I might become a monk one day. You never know. Let everything go. And that's where the real happiness is. But yeah. Thank you very much for listening. Please let me know what you think. Thank you very much. They're on Sunday.